singer who Simon described as having a voice like liquid gold.
Which, coincidentally, is also what Simon uses to wash his face. Liquid gold. It's Alice Fredenham.
Imagine spending years working quietly behind a beauty counter, never telling a single person outside your own head that you can sing, and then one night stepping onto the biggest talent show stage in Britain and reducing Simon Cowell to silence. That is exactly what happened to Alice Fredenham. And yet, only a few years after that moment made her a household name, she vanished so completely that fans, journalists, and even her own record label struggled to find her. So where did she go? And why did a woman with a voice good enough to be called liquid gold walk away from the one thing that could have made her a star? Stay with us, because the real answer is quieter, sadder, and more human than most people expect. Before any cameras or judges' panels, Alice Fredenham was simply a young woman from Harpenden in Hertfordshire who loved to sing but never expected anyone outside her living room to hear it. She earned her living as a beauty therapist, spending her days with clients rather than with vocal coaches or managers. Singing was something she did for herself, almost in secret, tucked away from the pressures of an industry she wasn't sure she belonged in. That secrecy would end up defining much of her story, both before and after fame found her. Her first brush with a televised talent competition came in 2012, when she auditioned for The Voice UK. She chose a jazz standard, The Lady is a Tramp, and stepped out in front of the show's rotating chairs hoping for at least 1 to 10. None did. It was the kind of rejection that could end a lot of people's dreams right there, in front of an audience that never even got to see her face. For Alice, though, it became something closer to a turning point than a full stop. Rather than give up, she quietly decided to try again, this time on a different stage entirely. In 2013, at 28 years old, Alice auditioned for Britain's Got Talent. Crucially, she didn't tell her friends, her family, or her boyfriend at the time that she was doing it. Her reasoning, in her own words during the show, was simple. If it didn't work out, she wouldn't have to explain the failure to anyone. That single decision says a lot about how she experienced performing. It wasn't glamorous ambition driving her forward. It was a private test she was setting for herself, one she preferred to take alone. What happened next became one of the most replayed moments in the show's history. Trembling with nerves, Alice told the judges she was scared, admitting that stage fright was something she had always struggled with. Then she began to sing My Funny Valentine, and the entire room seemed to shift. Her voice was low, smoky, and unusually mature for a reality competition stage more used to pop belters and novelty acts. When she finished, Simon Cowell leaned forward and told her that her voice was like liquid gold. Amanda Holden called the performance mesmerizing and sultry. Within hours, clips of the audition were spreading online, racking up millions of views and turning a beauty therapist from Hertfordshire into an overnight talking point across the country. That kind of sudden exposure changes a person's life whether they are ready for it or not. And Alice's stage fright didn't disappear just because one performance had gone well. Some viewers even speculated that her nerves had been exaggerated for sympathy, a rumor producers were quick to push back against. Whatever the truth of her mindset in that moment, the pressure only intensified as the competition moved into its semifinal rounds. Alice had reportedly been rehearsing Over the Rainbow for a semifinal performance, but was asked to switch to Ella Fitzgerald's Cry Me a River instead. With little time to adjust, she took the stage again, and this time the nerves that had made her audition so compelling worked against her. Small mistakes crept into the performance, and although her voice still carried real emotion, it lacked the spark that had made her famous weeks earlier. When the public vote came in, she narrowly missed a place in the top 3 of her semifinal and was eliminated from the competition. Attraction, the shadow dance group from Hungary, would go on to win that series. For a lot of fans watching at home, the elimination felt unfair, or at least premature. Alice had clearly demonstrated that she had a rare, distinctive voice, one rooted in old-fashioned jazz and torch song styling rather than the modern pop sound dominating the charts. Many assumed that a record deal, interviews, and a full album were only a matter of time. For a while, it genuinely looked that way. Sony Music reportedly approached Alice about recording demo tracks, a step that gave her a real shot at building a commercial career off the back of her television exposure. It wasn't a guaranteed contract, but it was more opportunity than most reality show contestants ever receive, and it suggested that industry insiders saw real potential in her. The demo sessions happened, but a full album with Sony never materialized. No official explanation was ever given publicly. though it isn't hard to imagine the mismatch at play. Alice's voice and style leaned toward vintage jazz and soul, phrasing that echoed singers from decades earlier rather than anything built for radio playlists or streaming algorithms. A major label chasing commercial hits and a singer devoted to a niche, classic sound don't always fit together neatly, and it appears that gap became difficult to close. For Alice personally, the setback likely stung in a way that went beyond ordinary professional disappointment. She had already been open about how uncomfortable the spotlight made her, and losing this opportunity so soon after her semifinal exit added another layer of rejection onto an already exhausting year. In the months that followed, Alice's public presence began to quietly shrink. She still pursued music on her own terms for a while, but the visibility she did during the height of her Britain's Got Talent fame gradually faded. Her website eventually stopped being updated. Her social media accounts, once a direct line between her and the fans who had fallen for her voice, slowed to a stop entirely. There was no dramatic announcement, no tell-all interview explaining a retirement or a break. She simply became harder and harder to find online, which for a public figure often speaks louder than any statement could. Around this time, Alice did give a handful of interviews in which she spoke candidly about the anxiety underlying her BGT run. She described her stage fright as something closer to genuine panic than ordinary nerves, explaining that the lead-up to a performance could leave her feeling physically unwell. That kind of honesty earned her a great deal of sympathy from fans, many of whom admired her openness about mental health at a time when reality TV rarely made space for that kind of vulnerability. But admiration alone doesn't build a sustainable music career. The modern industry increasingly demands constant visibility, social media updates, promotional appearances, interviews, and a willingness to put yourself in front of an audience again and again. For someone already managing serious performance anxiety, that expectation must have felt less like an opportunity and more like an obstacle standing between her and any kind of peace. It's worth pausing here to say plainly that Alice has never issued a detailed public statement about her mental health specifically, and nothing here should be read as a diagnosis or a confirmed account of her private struggles. What we do know, from her own comments at the time, is that she battled real anxiety around performing, and that the demands of an unpredictable industry didn't make that any easier to manage. Plenty of artists who experience a sudden burst of fame without years of gradual build-up describe the aftermath as overwhelming, and there's little reason to think Alice's experience was radically different. Just when it seemed like her story might quietly end there, Alice resurfaced, though not with the fanfare of a national broadcast. Around 2014 and into the years after, she began appearing occasionally at smaller, low-key events, things like local showcases and charity concerts that weren't widely advertised. These weren't the kind of bookings that made headlines. They were often announced only through flyers, small local listings, or word of mouth among people who already knew to look for her. For someone who had found the pressure of national television overwhelming, these smaller rooms likely offered something television never could: a level of control over the experience without millions of strangers watching her every move. Around this same period, with no major label backing her after the Sony opportunity had fallen through, Alice turned to crowdfunding to finance a debut album on her own terms. She launched a campaign seeking around £30,000 to cover the costs of production, a modest goal built for a small independent release rather than a major commercial rollout. Her fans, many of whom had stuck with her since her original audition went viral, responded generously, and the campaign ultimately raised more than £40,000. That kind of grassroots support says something important. Even without a major label pushing her name, a core group of genuine listeners still believed in her voice enough to fund the record themselves. The album that resulted was called Under the Covers, eventually released through the British independent label Cherry Red Records. It leaned into exactly the sound that had made her famous in the first place: understated, jazz and soul-inflected covers delivered with the same intimate, torch song phrasing that had stunned the Britain's Got Talent judges years earlier. Reviews from those who found it were largely positive, praising the clarity and emotional restraint in her singing. In a lot of ways, it was a faithful continuation of the artist people had first heard back in 2013, rather than a reinvention chasing a different audience. Commercially, though, the album struggled to reach much beyond her existing fan base. Without a major label's marketing muscle behind it, Under the Covers didn't get the radio push, the retail placement, or the promotional interviews that tend to carry independent releases into wider public awareness. It existed. It found the people who were already looking for it, and then it quietly settled into the background rather than launching a second wave of mainstream attention. For fans hoping the record might reignite a bigger career, the silence that followed its release was a disappointing, if familiar, pattern. After a handful of further small appearances, Alice once again stepped back from public life, and this time the retreat looked more permanent. There were no further albums, no comeback singles, no new interviews explaining what came next. Her online presence, modest as it already was, thinned out even further. Fans continued to ask questions in comment sections and forums for years afterward, wondering whether she had simply taken an extended break or walked away from music altogether. Eventually, some answers did arrive, though not from Alice herself. In September 2023, a report from the Hertz Advertiser, a local newspaper that had followed her career from the beginning, described repeated attempts to reach Alice for an update. According to that report, she did not respond to their inquiries. The paper also reportedly reached out to Patrick Phillips, the musician who had worked with her on Under the Covers, seeking any information about her whereabouts or plans. He, too, did not respond. The clearest statement to come out of any of this was attributed to Cherry Red Records, her former label, who told the paper simply that Alice had retired from the music industry and wished to retain her privacy. It wasn't a dramatic farewell, just a short, matter-of-fact line confirming what years of silence had already suggested. That statement effectively closed the book on speculation about an imminent comeback, at least for the time being. It's worth being honest about the limits of what's actually known here. There's been no detailed public explanation from Alice about why she stepped away, and no confirmed reporting about her current daily life, relationships, or plans. Some outlets have mentioned unconfirmed rumors linking her to a partner connected to the music industry, and occasional claims about new tracks quietly appearing online without any promotion behind them. But none of that has been verified directly by Alice or by a credible on-the-record source, so it's best treated as rumor rather than fact. One small, humanizing detail has circulated among fans over the years, and it's the kind of story that explains why people still think about her at all. According to accounts shared by fans, an admirer once sent Alice flowers around Valentine's Day, a nod to the song that had made her famous, and received a handwritten thank you note in return. It's a modest, quiet gesture, the opposite of a publicity stunt, and it fits everything else we know about how Alice has chosen to live since stepping back from the spotlight, privately, and largely on her own terms. So where does that leave her story today? As far as public reporting goes, Alice Fredenham appears to be exactly what her old label described: retired from music, keeping a low profile, and choosing not to engage with the public conversation about her career. There's no official website tracking her movements, no verified interviews detailing a new chapter, and no confirmed plans for a return to performing. What remains is the digital footprint she left behind, the viral audition that introduced her to the world, the interviews where she spoke honestly about anxiety and stage fright, and Under the Covers, the one independent album that captured her voice exactly as her earliest fans first fell in love with it. There's something worth sitting with in how her story turned out. Alice Fredenham never became the global pop sensation some assumed she was destined to be after that first viral clip, but she also never disappeared under scandal or controversy. Instead, she seems to have made a deliberate choice to protect her own well-being over chasing an industry that, by her own account, never sat comfortably with her. In an era where public figures are expected to be constantly visible, constantly online, and constantly available, choosing quiet privacy is its own kind of decision, and arguably a healthier one than staying in a spotlight that was clearly taking a toll. Whether Alice Fredenham ever returns to music is genuinely unknown, and anyone claiming certainty about her future plans is speculating rather than reporting fact. What can be said with confidence is that her Britain's Got Talent audition remains one of the most watched and most talked about moments in the show's long history, a reminder of just how powerful a single unguarded performance can be. Millions of people who never met her, never heard her speak beyond that stage, still remember exactly how it felt the moment she opened her mouth and started singing My Funny Valentine. For an artist who never wanted the constant churn of fame, leaving behind that kind of lasting impression, on her own terms, might be its own quiet version of success. What do you think happened to Alice Fredenham, and do you think she'll ever step back into the spotlight? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed learning her story, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more videos just like this one.